You think Disney makes money making movies. The blockbusters, the animated classics, the Marvel and Star Wars films that open everywhere at once. It is the most famous movie company on earth, so the movies must be the money. But here is the uncomfortable truth hiding inside the magic. The films are the riskiest, least reliable part of Disney. Some of them lose money outright. The real fortune is not on the screen at all. It is in a castle you pay to stand in front of, a toy isle full of characters Disney does not even manufacture, and a streaming service that bled cash for years, quietly paid for by the rest. Here is how it looks from the outside. Disney is a studio. It makes films, you buy tickets, and the box office is the scoreboard. When a Disney movie makes $1 billion worldwide, that is the headline, that is the story, that is the company winning. And Disney is genuinely enormous. About $91 billion of revenue in fiscal 2024. So the obvious conclusion writes itself. A giant company built on giant movies. But film is a brutal business, even for Disney. A single big-budget movie can cost $200–300 million to make and hundreds of millions more to market it around the world. If it opens soft, it can lose money outright. And box office swings wildly from year to year and from film to film. One summer a studio can do no wrong, the next it can have 3 flops in a row. You cannot run a stable global empire on a number that unpredictable. If Disney truly lived or died on whether each movie hit, it would be one of the most fragile big companies in the world. It is not fragile. It has paid a dividend, run a $100 billion business, and survived a parade of forgettable films. So the movies cannot be where the steady money lives. Something quieter is carrying this empire, and once you find it, you cannot unsee it. So where does the money really come from? Disney divides itself into segments, and it reports the profit from each one. And the numbers are not even close. In fiscal 2024, Disney's Experiences segment, the theme parks, the resorts, the cruise ships, and consumer products, earned about $9.3 billion in operating income. The entertainment segment, which includes the entire film studio and the streaming services, earned about $3.9 billion. The sports segment, ESPN, earned about $2.4 billion. Add the 3 together and you get a little over $15.5 billion of segment profit. The parks and experiences alone are nearly 60% of it. Read that again. The part of Disney that almost nobody thinks of as the main business, the turnstiles and the hotel rooms, out-earns the entire film and streaming operation by more than 2 to 1, and it was not a fluke year. Experiences set a record for both revenue and operating income in fiscal 2024, up from about $9 billion the year before. That is not a hit or miss number that lurches with one movie opening. It is a dependable river. Millions of guests paying premium prices every single day year after year, and the gap is widening in the right direction. Experiences climbed about 4% in fiscal 2024, from roughly $9 billion the year before to $9.3 billion. Set that beside the entertainment segment's $3.9 billion, and the picture is blunt. The single largest pool of profit at the most famous movie company on earth is not the movies. It is the turnstiles, and it is the one line you can practically set your watch by. And it grew while the rest of the entertainment world was at war over subscribers. Where a film slate can swing from triumph to disaster in a single quarter, the parks just keep climbing, a few percent on top of an already record year. Disney is even pouring money into more of it, launching new cruise ships and expanding resorts, because it has learned the obvious lesson hiding in its own accounts. The most reliable dollar Disney earns is not the one you spend at the box office. It is the one you spend standing inside the experience. And here is the part that really separates the park from the movie. People do not visit a park once and call it a lifetime purchase the way they watch a film once. They come back. They come back as kids, then they bring their own kids, then their grandchildren. A blockbuster sells you a ticket on one weekend. A park sells the same family tickets across 3 generations, plus the hotel, plus the food, plus the souvenirs on the way out. The movie is an event. The park is an annuity. And then there is licensing, which is almost invisible and almost pure profit. Disney does not make most of the Mickey shirts, the Elsa dolls, the Spider-Man backpack. Other companies make them, sell them, and pay Disney a royalty for the right to put its characters on the box. In 2024, Disney was once again the largest licensor on the planet, with an estimated $63 billion in retail sales of licensed product. That is roughly a fifth of the entire global market for licensed goods and nearly double the next company on the list. Think about what that means. No factory. No store. Disney owns the character, lets someone else take all the cost and all the risk, and collects a cut on the way through. That is about as clean as money gets. And it keeps flowing for decades after a film has left the theaters. And look at the scale of that against everything else. $63 billion of goods sold at retail in a single year, more than a fifth of the entire world market for licensed products, and roughly double the next company on the list. Disney has held the top spot for years. But notice the sleight of hand. Most of that $63 billion is rung up by other companies in other stores, on products Disney never touched. What lands inside Disney is the royalty on top, a slice of the sale, paid like clockwork. So it does not need the toy to be a hit. It does not carry the warehouse, the unsold stock, the markdowns. It carries a character, and it rents that character out to anyone willing to manufacture for it. The world's factories do the labor. Disney holds the copyright and waits for the check. That is why this line of the business barely shows up when people argue about Disney's latest movie, and yet it never stops earning. Now here is why this works, and why the risky movie is still worth making even when it loses. Because a Disney movie was never really sold to you for the price of the ticket. The film's deeper job is to create a character you love. And a character you love is an asset Disney can charge for again and again, for the rest of your life and your children's lives. The movie is the advertisement. The character is the product. And the character pays out everywhere the movie cannot. Follow one character through the machine. A film introduces, say, a new princess. The box office may be fine, may be a disappointment. It almost does not matter to what comes next. Because that princess now becomes a ride at a park you fly across the country to visit. A costume in the toy aisle, a meet and greet you queue an hour for. A doll, a lunchbox, a bedspread, a birthday theme. People pay premium prices to stand in a park built around characters they first met on a screen. And they pay again at the gift shop on the way out. The film spends money once. The character earns money for 30 years. So a movie that loses at the box office can still be one of the most profitable things Disney ever made, just not where you were looking. And you can see the pricing power directly in the parks. In late fiscal 2024, Disney's domestic parks made more money even when attendance was flat, because guests were each spending more. Read that carefully. The same number of people paying more and the profit still goes up. That only happens when people are paying for something they cannot get anywhere else. And what they cannot get anywhere else is the characters. A roller coaster is a roller coaster. A roller coaster that flies you through a galaxy you have loved since childhood is something a family will cross an ocean and empty a savings account for. The movie built that attachment. The park bills for it over and over. There is a second layer to this that is easy to miss. The parks are not just steady, they are protected. A rival cannot simply build a better castle and steal the crowd. Because the crowd is not coming for the castle. It is coming for Cinderella, for Spider-Man, for the galaxy far, far away, and there is exactly one company on Earth allowed to put those characters inside a theme park. So Disney is selling something a competitor is legally not permitted to copy. That is what economists call a moat, and Disney's moat is not concrete or steel. It is copyright. The films keep widening it. Every new character that lands is one more thing a rival can never offer. One more reason the family books the trip to Orlando and not somewhere cheaper. The studio, in other words, is not really competing with other studios for your ticket. It is manufacturing the very thing that makes the parks impossible to replace. And this is where the real engineering of a company like Disney shows up. The steady businesses quietly pay for the risky ones. This is cross-subsidy. The parks and the licensing throw off reliable, high-margin cash. Disney can take that cash and pour it into something that loses money for years. Like building a streaming service from nothing. Disney Plus launched in late 2019, and to win subscribers against Netflix, Disney spent on a scale that is hard to comprehend. By most reporting, the direct-to-consumer business lost more than $11 billion in total from launch through 2024. $11 billion. For most companies on Earth, a hole that deep would be the end of the story. For Disney, the castle paid for it. The toy royalties paid for it. One arm of the empire carried another on its back for half a decade. And then watch the turn. In fiscal 2023, Disney's main streaming operation lost about $2.5 billion in a single year. In fiscal 2024, that same operation flipped to a small profit, around $140 million. Put the whole streaming business together, the entertainment side and the sports side, and it swung from a combined loss of about $2.6 billion in fiscal 2023 to a combined profit of about $130 million in fiscal 2024. That is a roughly $2.7 billion improvement in a single year, on a business that had bled for half a decade. A swing that violent does not happen because subscribers suddenly arrived. It happens because someone deep, pocketed enough sat behind it long enough for the math to bend. Disney then told investors it was targeting roughly $1 billion of streaming profit the following year. So the loss-making division everyone watched, the streaming wars, the subscriber headlines, was bankroll all the way to profitability by the boring division nobody talks about. A turnstile at a theme park. A royalty check on a doll. The spotlight was on the part that lost money. The profit was sitting in the part you walked right past. And notice how durable each leg of this is. The parks cannot be pirated, downloaded, or skipped with an ad blocker. The licensing royalty arrives whether or not the latest film was any good, because it is riding on characters that are decades old. Mickey Mouse is approaching 100 years. The princesses span generations. Disney is not really selling you a movie ticket or a subscription. It is renting you access, again and again, to characters it has owned for so long they feel like they belong to you. That is the asset. The films just keep feeding it new ones. So here is what Disney really is. Not a movie studio with some theme parks attached. An intellectual property machine, where the movies are the marketing, the characters are the product, and the parks and the toys are the cash register that funds everything risky. Once you see that shape, you start spotting cross-subsidy everywhere in big business. The flashy division that gets the headlines is often being quietly carried by a dull, dependable one in the back. The tech giant whose search ads pay for the moonshots. The retailer whose membership fee pays for the thin margin shelves. The thing they sell you is not always the thing that makes the money, and sometimes the money's whole job is to pay for the thing that does not make money yet. The movie was never the point. It was the spark that lights a fire Disney gets to sell tickets to for the next 50 years. And that pattern, one business secretly funding another, is exactly where we are headed next.